Welcome to the Daily Decameron, Tales to Connect Us in Troubled Times. Episode 1, Rascals and Relics. Today, the story of a Franciscan friar, Frate Cipolla, or in English, Brother Onion. Equal parts holy man and con man, Frate Cipolla uses his quick wit and rhetorical skills to turn a prank played on him to his own advantage. The tale is set in the hill town of Certaldo, a few miles southwest of Florence, the town where Boccaccio lived most of his life and where he died in 1375. His house there is now a museum and library dedicated to Boccaccio studies. And speaking of onions, the Cipolla di Certaldo, the famous sweet red onion of Certaldo, so prized that it earned a place of honor in the city's coat of arms as early as the 12th century, and so beloved that Boccaccio chose to immortalize it in this tale and its namesake protagonist, is still farmed with pride in the fields around the town. Sesta giornata, novella decima. Frate Cipolla. The 6th day, the 10th novella, the tale of Brother Cipolla. Certaldo, as you may know, is a hill town in the Val d'Elsa, and every year one of the brothers of Sant'Antonio, Brother Cipolla, used to come there to ask for alms from the villagers, who always welcomed him warmly, in no small measure because of his name, since their region is famous for growing the finest onions in Tuscany. This Brother Cipolla was a lovable scoundrel, small and red-headed, with a jovial face, and though he had no education, he was a master storyteller whose way with words made him loved by everyone in the region. One Sunday in August, he made a visit to Certaldo, and finding all of the villagers gathered for morning mass, he stood before them and declared, "Ladies and gentlemen, it is your custom every year to send some of your grain and fodder to the poor brothers of Sant'Antonio, so that their blessed patron saint might watch over your oxen, your donkeys, your pigs, and your sheep. And of course, many of you also give a tithe once a year. And so, today, after the midday prayer, when you hear the church bells ringing, I invite you to gather outside the church, where I shall preach to you as always, and, as a special blessing, I will reveal to you a most sacred and wondrous relic, which I have brought back with me from the Holy Land. Nothing less than a feather left behind by the angel Gabriel when he made the Annunciation to the Virgin Mary in Nazareth." Now there were among the crowd that day 2 clever young men, Giovanni del Bragoniera and Biagio Pizzini. Greatly amused by Brother Cipolla's invitation to witness his prized relic, they hatched a plan to play a trick on him. Knowing that the friar would be lunching with a friend that day, they would go at noon to the inn where he was staying. Biagio would distract the friar's manservant, while Giovanni would find the angelic feather, or whatever it was, and steal it. The manservant in question was one Guccio, who was known to some as Greasy Guccio, to others as Guccio the Whale, and to still others as Guccio the Pig. Brother Cipolla used to enjoy rattling off his 9 distinguishing features. He was late, filthy, and lying, negligent, disobedient, and foul-mouthed, and careless, forgetful, and immoral. Plus, he would add a few other qualities best left unmentioned. And the most comical thing about him, the friar would say, is that he thinks himself so handsome with his great greasy black beard that he believes every woman is in love with him, and wherever he goes, he's always looking for a wife. And this was the man Brother Cipolla had left at the inn to guard his belongings, especially his saddlebags in which he kept his precious relics. True to form, Guccio had spotted a scullery maid he was powerless to resist, for she was, like him, short, fat, ill-shapen, sweaty, greasy, and covered in soot. And so he swooped down to the kitchen like a vulture, leaving the friar's room unlocked and his possessions unattended. He told the girl, whose name was Nuta, that he was a gentleman by proxy, with more than 1,009 florins to his name. And though his cowl was so greasy it could have seasoned every soup pot in Alto Pascio, his doublet so patched up and sweat-stained it was more colorful than any fabric from India, and his stockings so riddled with holes they looked like lace, he nonetheless wooed Nuta at great length, with promises of buying her new clothing and taking her away from all this drudgery, all of which, as always, fell on deaf ears. Meanwhile, the two young men, delighted to find Guccio thus distracted, headed to the friar's room. Finding it unlocked, they went straight to the saddlebags, opened them, and pulled out a little box wrapped in silk. Inside, they found a single feather from the tail of a parrot, and knew at once that this must be the relic Brother Cipolla had promised to reveal to the people of Certaldo. They would surely believe him, for in those days the riches of Egypt had not yet reached Tuscany, and most people had never heard of, much less seen, a parrot. Giovanni and Biagio seized the feather, and, so as not to leave the box empty, filled it with some charcoal they found in a corner of the room. After a long lunch and a short nap, Brother Cipolla commanded Guccio to gather the saddlebags and accompany him to the church. Guccio tore himself away from Nuta and, bloated from drinking too much water, slowly waddled to the church, where he began to ring the bells. Throughout the day, word of the feather of the angel Gabriel had spread in Certaldo, and a huge crowd had already assembled to witness the unveiling of the relic. Brother Cipolla gave a solemn sermon, ordered 2 candles to be lit, had the congregation recite the Confiteor, removed his cowl, took out the reliquary box, slowly unwrapped the silk, said a few words in praise of the angel Gabriel, and opened the box. When he saw that it was filled with charcoal, without the slightest hesitation, he raised his hands and face to the heavens and cried out, "O Lord, praised be thy power forever." And then he closed the box, turned to the crowd, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, in my youth, I was sent on a sacred mission by my superiors to the lands of the rising sun. I set out from Venice, made my way through Greekville, and thence on horseback through Sardinia. From there, I traveled on to the bluffs of Lyreland and the twin cities of Scamia and Fraudia, then traversed the mountains of the Abruzzi by way of Parsnip in India, where, I swear by my habit, I saw feathers fly, an incredible sight, by the way, for those of you who have never witnessed it, and finally made my way to the Holy Land. It was there that I encountered the venerable Monsignor Don't Blame Me, I Beg You, the revered patron of Jerusalem, who, when he saw my Franciscan robes, insisted on showing me all of the relics in his care, which were so numerous that if I had made a list of them, it would have been a mile long. But not to disappoint you, I will mention a few. First, there was the finger of the Holy Spirit, then the forelock of the seraph who appeared to San Francesco, the fingernail of a cherub, the jawbone of Lazarus, a vial filled with the sweat of San Michele from when he battled with the devil, and a few of the rays of the star that appeared to the 3 magi in the east, among many other things. And in exchange for some rare books that I had brought for him, he gave me a splinter from the Holy Cross, a flask containing the sound of the bells of the Temple of Solomon, the feather from the angel Gabriel, which I have already told you about, and some of the charcoal over which the blessed martyr San Lorenzo was roasted alive, all of which I still possess and carry with me wherever I go. Now, I keep the feather of the angel Gabriel in a special box so as not to damage it, and the charcoal of San Lorenzo in another box, so similar that I often mix them up, and that is what happened today. I've brought the box with the charcoal instead of the box with the feather. But I don't believe this was a mistake. Indeed, it was the will of God who himself put the box with the charcoal in my hands, thus reminding me that the feast of San Lorenzo will be upon us in just 2 days. It was God who wanted you to see these sacred coals that were extinguished by the sweat of San Lorenzo's most holy body, and thus to rekindle in your souls the devotion you owe the sainted martyr. And so, my blessed children, remove the hoods from your heads, draw near in devotion, and know that whosoever has the sign of the cross marked on himself with this charcoal shall, for a year, not be burned by fire without feeling it. Then he sang a hymn to San Lorenzo, opened the box, and showed everyone the charcoal. The credulous crowd gathered round, and, opening their purses, gave Brother Cipolla more money than they had ever given him before, each one begging that he touch them with the coals. In reply, he took the coals in hand and made crosses as large as he could on their shirts, their doublets, and their veils, all the while reassuring them that whatever part of the coals might be consumed, they would miraculously replenish themselves as soon as they were placed back in the box, just as they had always done. And thus, with great profit to himself, Brother Cipolla marked every citizen of Certaldo with the sign of the cross, and through his quick wit, played a trick on the men who had tried to trick him by stealing the feather. They, in turn, on hearing his fantastical tale, laughed till they thought their jaws would break. And when the crowd had dispersed, they confessed to him with the greatest delight what they had done, and gave him back his feather, which, by the way, the following year, yielded an even better take than the charcoal had brought him that day. Thanks for listening to The Daily Decameron, a production of the Italian Cultural Institute of San Francisco. Anna Maria Di Giorgio, director. This program was produced by Franca Cavallaro and edited by Enrica Cavalli, with music performed by John Sayles. I'm your host and translator, Steve Siegelman. We hope you'll join us for more episodes in both English and Italian. Meanwhile, stay well, stay in touch, and share your favorite stories with the people you love.